Okay, so good morning, everyone. I hope you're doing well.
Good morning, sir.
Okay, great. Okay, I hope you can see my screen. So, a quick update. So I believe your project is going well. So, feel free to let me know if you face any issue. We can schedule some meeting. And though we met, last weekend, but yeah, we can meet again if you have any issue. If you need any help in terms of resources, in terms of any feedback, let us know. Let us know. We'll be very happy to help you with that. And another update. So I posted on the Google Classroom. So we'll be having next quiz on next Thursday, 8th of April. And we'll be having one invited talk by Dr. Devanjan Mahata from Bloomberg, USA. So the talk timing will be 8 a.m. since he's in US. Probably 9 a.m. would be a bit late, basically a bit late for him. So he kindly agreed to give talk at 8 a.m. So we'll be starting at 8 a.m. And after the talk, we'll be having quiz and whatever the scheduled presentation we have for that day, we'll do. Okay, so with this note, I think we can get started. And okay, so hmm. So today we'll be discussing about learning to rank, what it is, and why do we need it. So far in the last few classes, we have discussed methods to ranking documents in information retrieval. So we have used cosine similarity, IDA, BM25, proximity, and probably uh, pivoted document length normalization, etc. So page rank we'll be discussing in the some further classes. So, but in a way, they give some kind of ranking to the different documents that you have. So we have also looked at in the last few classes about classifying documents. We discuss about standing queries, how the classification could help you, and we discuss about the some of the supervised machine learning classifier, which will help us in the information retrieval domain. So at least it gives an idea, at least whatever the result, probably the topics we have covered so far. Surely we can use the machine learning to rank the documents uh, basically displayed in the search result, because for many reasons, and that's why we need to think of how the machine learning can further help, uh, because right now we have already discussed about classification, right? But is the classification enough? So that's why we need to discuss about, okay, so how we can rank the document, because usually the classification is mainly categorizing into different classes. It doesn't tell you about whether the different classes have some rank or not, right? So that is the probably the problem we also need to think, because in case of information retrieval, ranks plays a very important and the pivotal role. So basically, yeah, so using machine learning to rank the document displayed in the search result definitely sounds a good idea, and it is known as the machine learned relevance, or you can say learning to rank. So this is something we'll be going to cover today. So this is one example you can see. So uh, uh, so learning basically the rank, uh, how you basically you can rank the different documents is something very important topics, because especially if you're going to work with any big company which has huge amount of data, and especially if you're going to work with the search engine companies, like probably which has search engines like Baidu, Microsoft, Google, and so on. So they have several positions where basically you can do, even different e-commerce websites, and probably the companies they need basically they need to rank the different documents, and probably they need to recommend the documents based on your personal preference, and probably many other aspects. So these are basically very, very high paying jobs, and probably the topics. That's why it's very important to uh, go through it probably in more details, especially if you have any interest in pursuing your career in the data science. Okay, so machine learning for IR, so that is a learning to rank differently, as we have discussed in the last few slides. So it's a good idea, right? It's a good idea. So that's why it has been actively researched in the last few years, and it has also been deployed by the major search engine companies in the last few years. So can anybody comment on why it didn't happen earlier? Because the modern supervised machine learning algorithms were there for several years. So for example, for last 25 or plus years. Similarly, the naive Bayes has been around for 60 plus years. Then why? I mean, at least in information retrieval, it started a bit late. Anyone?
Trial version.
Unavailability of like, soft
Yeah, Nicholas.
format in data.
We were not having that much compute as well as the ability to that amount of data that were available.
Very nice. Yeah. Anyone else want to add? I think some. Anyone else was trying to say something? Was it Divisha or someone else?
So learning to rank methods like were more accurate when the neural IR came around. So probably though early like statistical ML or those approaches might not have given much gains compared to traditional approaches. So probably only when neural IR picked up, like the gains were significant. Maybe.
Yeah, even before neural IR, I mean, if you see, I mean, even so, definitely the neural IR basically has changed the whole discourse significantly. The results are, be it for recommendation system, be it for ranking, I mean, change has much significantly. But even before, I mean, so some of you rightly mentioned. So, firstly, I mean, definitely the data, right? So the data was not that much available. Secondly, the computer resources, and another major reason is that. So basically, there was a kind of the both community are working kind of separately in isolation, or I would say they are not very well connected. So kind of IR community is mostly focusing on the statistics and whatever the other uh, probabilistic method they were working on for information retrieval. ML community is mostly working in isolation, mostly focusing on the theory, and probably not well connected with. So it's not only limited, I mean, the applicable to the IR, but in fact, ML was not very well connected to many other domains. So, for example, right now the people started using ML for network traffic, or probably in many other areas, right? But which was not there earlier. So probably due to lack of data, due to lack of resources, due to lack of probably since they were working in isolation. So now this is uh, getting full. I mean, this bridge is kind of getting fulfilled. So now the people are working with more closely and so on. So in the last few years, there were some works at least. So it's not like there were no collaboration or probably the work between them. There were some, but definitely not so many. So these are some of the work in that area, which at least started creating the interest of how basically the machine learning methods can further improve the overall information retrieval domain. So another reason is that like some definitely like some idea just takes time to appreciate it. It's more like people start using anything until they feel that the technology is mature, right? So for example, when the deep learning started, so deep learning was there for a long time, right? But uh, it just started very significantly after the back propagation, and probably after probably the CNN and other stuff, LSTM stuff that has been there in recently, right? And also the computational resources definitely, and the data that is. So sometimes definitely the especially the companies, especially I mean the researchers are very open, right? They are very fine to use anything and probably uh, produce some research papers and probably the ideas, validate the ideas and so on. But often you have seen that something probably working very well in the research setting, but once you go for the deployment or probably the industry setting, most of them get failed. Any reason do you think why this happens? Anyone? Or do you think it's true or not? Like something which is working very well in the research environment, but once you deploy it in the real setting, often it gets failed. Any reason?
Because in research setting, it's like a more controlled setting. But in real world use cases, like the assumptions made do not hold, and out of distribution generalization is like something that has not been solved and which frequently occurs out there.
Exactly. Exactly. So also, I mean, once the point you move to the industry, right? The point you move to the real uses, right? So you'll see a lot of, as you rightly mentioned. So during the research setting, it's more controlled, right? In real world, you don't have any control over that. You'll keep getting a lot of noise. You will keep getting a lot of biases. You can keep getting probably irrelevant information, which kind of affect your overall mood, right? And especially machine learning models are not very robust these days, right? Especially the deep learning models, right? Because the deep learning models are kind of black box model. You don't know what is happening inside. So have you seen example where there is a person, he just probably have just picture of a poster basically in his t-shirt where a lot of people are there, a kind of crowded people. So in that case, while using this picture, a poster, the machine learning model won't able to find the person. This kind of person will be invisible to the machine learning model. So have you seen this, by the way, this example? Anyways, so there are several such examples where basically so despite, I mean, for example, suppose you're taking a picture of probably a person, right? Even just by changing one pixel in the which probably even you cannot notice by your bare eyes. So classification accuracy change, or probably the class level which you are predicting will change, right? So often ideally this should not be the case, but it happens because you don't know, because probably the models that you've trained on is not robust enough. Probably they are not probably able to deal well with the probably noise or probably any changes in the other distribution of the data that you will be having, right? So these are some of the reasons. I mean, definitely, and limited training data, that is the lack of data, is one of the definitely major issue. So especially like in case of real world use, uh, as opposed to the writing academic paper which we're referring. So because in case of research paper, it is very well controlled, right? Okay, so you have these many queries, you have these many documents. So you assume that you are not looking anything beyond the given query and probably the documents that you have. But in case of real world, I mean, the user can write anything as a query, right? So that's basically the changes, and it's very difficult. It's very difficult to probably cope up with that. And industry as well as the research community both acknowledge that, and now they are basically working in more, you can say, the more closely as compared to before. So that's what I mean here. So this has changed both in academic industry. So now even the industry is releasing the data. So earlier there was no industry releasing their own data, but now at least the industry also, because it's not possible at all for the academician to basically create such a large volume of data, or probably the real users data. Most of the academician data is revolves around, you can say, the synthetic data or probably some simulated data. So they work in more on the simulation setting. But industry, since they have the real data, so you can work in collaboration with the academia and probably get basically uh, get it done. So also the poor machine learning techniques were not that good before. So now it is still keep getting improved, and definitely it can help the overall machine learning information retrieval based system. Okay, so earlier, I mean, also the number of features or probably the type of features that we had earlier was very limited. And since machine learning traditional machine learning models often learn all this through the whatever the feature you feed it, right? So if the features are relevant, definitely they are going to learn a better model. It will be better generalized. If not, I mean, it is not going to work well. So earlier, that was one of the another reason. Like, so there was not enough feature for machine learning to true value. So now it is getting better. So why machine learning model much needed now? Because uh, because earlier, I mean, we only have traditional ranking functions in IR, which use a small number of features. Normally the TF, IDF, document length, and some of the proximity based feature that we have discussed earlier, right? So it was possible. It was basically possible now to uh, tune these weights coefficient by hand earlier, but since we know that now earlier you are dealing with probably a limited amount of data, which is feasible to do. It was basically possible to do some kind of handcrafted feature, create some handcrafted feature. You can basically do an analysis of whatever the representation of data that you have, and you can do. But now, given the scale, given the big data around you, it is not getting possible these days to basically just use handcrafted features or do some uh, manual work to basically find out the weights and so on. So despite machine learning was not needed earlier, so now it is very important for several reasons, because now you have the features beyond these traditional ranking features, right? So now you don't have just TF, IDF, or probably document, but many other features that you have which you can utilize. Can anybody name some of the features which probably in addition to these features can be used for learning to rank?
So the syntactic features like POS tags, or they could also be good indicators.
Okay, great. Anything else? So suppose if I will ask you, okay, so if you have to propose a learning to rank method, so and probably I will provide you a set of documents. For example, you are participating in some challenge organized by Google, right? So you have set of documents around you. So what are the features you are going to consider? Definitely 3F, IDF, and document length, and what Venkatesh mentioned is definitely the first few features that you'll consider. But often this may not give you the optimal result, right? You want to probably win the challenge, because often these challenges also attract a huge money. I mean, for example, $50,000, $1 lakh, and so on. Anyone? You can think of any document around you that you search usually on the web. Okay, so take your time, you can think about it, and I hope that will basically also help you in somehow in your assignment that we'll be releasing later today. And yeah. So why ML is needed now? The reason, because yeah, so now we have, in addition to these features like TF, IDF, and document length, now we have log frequency of the query word in the anchor text, number of images on the page, number of links on the page rank of the page, URL length, does URL contain this, page edit recency, how recently or when basically the page was updated, page loading speed, because for example, even this matters a lot. Do you think some page, I mean, all the pages take the same time, or is it different for all the pages?
They're different from many pages, different types of pages.
Right. And what are the reason do you think? I mean, it takes probably different time to load different page.
So sometimes it is related to caching, like the website has been opened previously or not. And also sometimes the amount of data to be downloaded and internet speed.
Exactly. And also you see, I mean, it depends on like how, whether your page is static or dynamic, right? So if it is static, I mean, probably it will just load up soon. If it is dynamic, doing a lot of jQuery, you're basically doing a lot of running different JavaScript and so on, it will take time. It is running a lot of things and so on. And for example, even if suppose the pages has number of images, right, it will take you more time because it need to download the images first in order to show you, right? So these are again, so just additional features that you can think of. So anybody know Amit Singhal? Anyways, you can search about him. So yeah, so he was in Google, and he says, I mean, like in 2008, still, I mean, long time back, he mentioned, I mean, they were using such 200 such features. So each such features are giving some signals about it, whether it is relevant or not, whether it's informative or not for a given query and so on. So in a way, they're basically considering 200 such features. So now I'm sure, and it will be even beyond 500 these days, right? It will be beyond 200, 500 these days. What are the different features they are considering and so on. So even, I mean, the type of page, even the type of document, even the source, or probably even the location, and many other features you can think of and it gives some signal to your model whether this will be relevant to the given user or not, for a given query or not. So these are some simple examples. So using classification for an ad hoc information retrieval. So what you do, so basically you consider some relevancy here. So relevancy here is often, for example, in case of classification, you can say it's relevant or not. So relevancy is a kind of binary, but you can think of multi-class problem as well, where basically you can use different classes like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like this belong to class 1. And for example, relevant, highly relevant, less relevant, blah, 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 you can do so. So in a way, you can think this problem statement as collector training corpus QDR. So where basically the QD is the pair of query and document, and R is basically the whether it's relevant or not. Again, depends on what type of classes you are considering. So for example, for a simplicity, let's take it, it's either relevant or not relevant, right? So in this way, since you are building a classification model, you need some kind of labels for that. So here basically you can create query document pair and represent them by some feature vector, right? So if you recall, we discussed some of the feature vector in the last few classes. So one is the we can compute the cosine similarity, right? We can compute the cosine similarity. We can also compute the omega is like minimum query window size. So whether, like, if you recall, the basically W or omega is the shortest text span that includes all query words, right? So what do you think? Which one will be a better feature, whether when the W is small or higher? Anyone?
So it has to be balanced. Like, because if we take too few query terms, it may be relevant documents. If we take too many query terms, like we might miss out on some rare documents. So it has to be like somewhere in the middle, a balance.
And how about the cosine similarity?
So that again, like we would fix a threshold, like 0.7 or so above. So
Exactly. Exactly. So that's why probably you need some kind of you need to learn a mapping, right? Rather than just making a handcrafted rule, you need some kind of mapping which basically learn in better way, right? So query term proximity is also one of the important new weighting factor that you need to consider. So once you have all this data, you can train a machine learning model to predict the class R of the document for a given query document pair. So for a given query document pair as an input, it will basically classify whether it's a relevant or not. So this is something example you can think of. So these are the example you have. So these are the different documents you have, and these are the different query. So you can compute the cosine score, right? So for example, right now let's consider document 37. For this given query, the cosine similarity is high as compared to probably the other query, which is penguin logo, and it comes to be less. Similarly, in case of I mean the window size, I mean this is window size is less 3, like probably when you say the window length 3, what does this indicate? Does this query exactly comes in the document based on this window size 3? What you can say? So based on given this window size, this query, do you think this particular phrase has appeared in this given document?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's right. So in a way, I mean, you can think, because the the size is 3, right? So if this comes to be 3, so it means probably the exact phrase has come. So that's why even probably the cosine similarity is high as well as the W, and that's why overall this document 37 is the relevant. But in case of penguin logo, do you think the penguin logo phrase appeared in this document, given that the window length is 4? Anyone?
No.
Yeah, that's true. So again, so in a way, I mean, these are some cues which basically help you a lot, whether the for given this query, whether the document is relevant or not. So right now we are talking about the binary relevance. So since the cosine similarity is also low, as well as the distance is bit high, so it's not probably the relevant one. And same you can probably do for other queries, documents, pair, and accordingly, whatever the model you have, machine learning model that you have learned, it will do the prediction. Okay, so this is relevant or not based on the given these two features. But these two features are not the only features we have, right? So you can have probably many such features. So so right now, suppose we approximate or probably find a linear function, basically which basically compute the score for a given document and the query. You can compute this in form of cosine similarity and the window length that you have, window size. And if you use some kind of linear scoring function, so it can be probably approximated by A alpha, probably B W plus C, right? Once you have this linear classifier, so now the problem is how we can determine these parameter A, B, and C. Because once you have this A, B, C, you can compute this score. Sorry, you can compute this score, and once this overall score is greater than some threshold, you can basically take the call whether it's a relevant or not. So it's basically just like when we are doing the text classification.
So could you repeat what alpha and W were there?
Alpha and W is here, right? Alpha is the cosine similarity between the query and document, and the W is the shortest text span, the window length we are talking about. Like what is the minimum window length in this document which covers this overall query term. Is it clear?
Okay. Okay. So in Penguin logo, we have window length 4. That means, no, like I didn't understand how the window length is 4 there.
Got it right?
No, for
No,
Penguin logo, why is the window length 4?
it might be because this given document between penguin and logo there might be probably two other terms, two other words. There is no penguin
Okay.
logos. So for example, you can say penguin
Okay.
is a logo, something like that.
Okay.
So this is once you probably create such linear classifier, you can probably you are basically willing to partition the overall space that you have based on the cosine similarity and probably the term proximity, that is the window length you have, and you can divide in such a way. Once you find the coefficient, once you find the coefficient A, B, and C, you can draw this line, right? And once you draw this line, so one side probably will be the relevant document, and the other side will be probably the not really this kind of decision surface you are willing to achieve. So do we need kind of more complex example of machine learning, because these are kind of easier, right? So it's very kind of easier to find a kind of very accurate, not 100%, but very accurate partition which divide the probably relevant and non-relevant documents. So we can generalize this to the classifier function over more features. So as we said here, right? So these two features are not only features you have many other features like this and so on. So it means you need to make a kind of complex classifier, because that will make the overall classification even more accurate, right? So in that case, so now we have to go beyond probably the alpha and W. You need to think of other features. So we can generalize this to the classifier, function or more features. We can use other methods to basically for learning the linear classification rate. So there are a number of papers have been proposed in this area. So Nalapati is the one who has basically presented, the published on paper, which is got very popular. So part of this core, part of this particular lecture is given from this particular paper. So for greater details, I would recommend to look into the paper. But we want to have an overall idea rather than probably going into specific algorithm. So we will try to give the more you can say the gist of this paper. So here basically the relevant score you want to compute. So you want to compute the relevance score G. This G is the basically kind of function that you can think of, whether given this document and the query, whether it's a relevant or not. So you can so earlier it was just linear function, right? So now it has changed from linear to probably some other function which is probably more complex, I would say, which is not only considering now the cosine similarity and the proximity factor, but probably other features that you have. And once you have that, similarly you can also compute some weight or something, and accordingly you can come up with a better classifier. So SVM is one of the popular supervised learning technique which has been proposed somewhere 1995 by some researchers, and later around 2000 year around in the years of 2000 or 2002, the Zhao and probably the many other researchers have started using for the ranking, and that's how it's getting very popular since then, at least in the information retrieval based system. So it uses basically SVM. So what we want to do, so we want to have this function in such a way, whenever this score, this relevance score is less than -1, you can say it's not relevant. When it is greater than 1, you can say it's a relevant document. So you can decide uh, if it is relevant or not, if it is greater than 0. So based on, it will be more clear when I will show you the visualization of this. So basically the features are now basically not word presence feature, because many times in the training set you may have some words, right? But while testing, that words may not be there. So you do not need to only, you do not need, you should also have some features which should not only based on whether the word present or not, because if that would be the case, it is not going to deal with the word which probably may not present in the training set, right? So that's why we need other kind of feature as well. And another issue that we feel is unbalance, because whenever building a classifier, so most of the machine learning methods perform well when they are balanced. When I say the balance, so for example, considering we have two classes, relevant and not relevant, right? It would be ideal, it would be great if we have equal number of examples for both classes. But in real world, do you think they are same? Do we have the equal number of relevant document as compared to non-relevant documents? What do you think? In the real world, do we have the equal number of document for relevant and non-relevant documents for a
Number of non-relevant documents are greater than relevant.
So it won't be just greater, but it will be significantly greater, right? So for example, you have billions of documents, but for a given query, it will be probably just 100, 200, or probably some thousands of documents, right? So it's a huge difference. So what if, if we give all non-relevant document and probably the all relevant document that we have for a given queries to train the model, what will happen? So in that case, probably the model basically will be biased toward probably more to the non-relevant example, right? Because it has so many such examples. So like even in the random, even if it start classifying non-relevant, it will be accurate in 90% of times, or probably 95%. But despite it won't be ideal, because it is not considering basically it do not have basically the learned the relevant document well as compared to the non-relevant, right? So that's why often in case of machine learning, it's good to have balanced data. So how you can balance it? So you can basically rather than having all non-relevant document, you can basically select some sample. You can perform some sampling, and you can select just a few of non-relevant document, or you can say the equal number of relevant documents in from the non-relevant list, so that you have equal number of example and it can work well. So this is one example where in this paper they have they have basically produced the results. So they have considered the 4-track data set. So they compared with some of the existing state-of-the-art methods, like Lemur is one of them. Similarly, this is from CMU, by the way. And so similarly, linear kernel are normally best or almost good as quadratic kernel. And so in SVM as well, I mean, they have compared with SVM as well. So they have used 6 features, all variant of TF, IDF, TF into IDF, and probably many others. And they have produced the results. And they basically they were trying to find out what can basically improve the overall information retrieval performance. So these are these are the results they have reported in their paper. They have found that Lemur were basically performing uh, slightly better than SPM on the different tasks. But they have mentioned that when SPM, I mean, if you added the additional features that you have, like URL depth and probably many other features, this has improved significantly. Like earlier, it was probably the baseline was 58%, but it has increased to 78%. So in a way, I mean, so this paper is about how you can sorry, how you can basically use different features that you have and try the different state-of-the-art methods to see which one is yielding the best result. So the next we want to discuss about, so far we have discussed mainly about the classification. So far we have discussed mainly about the classification. So as we have discussed, so only classification works well when you have the standing queries, right? But often not every time you have the standing queries. So only classification is not also going to help you. So what are the other possibility? So as we have discussed in the beginning of the class, we need to have something like learning to rank. We need to somehow rank our classifications or probably the classes that we have, right? So classification probably is not the right way to think about approaching ad hoc IR. Again, so I'm excluding the standing queries. In general, ad hoc IR, the classification probably not the best way. So, so because the problems of classification is that it mapped to an unordered set of classes. So there is no ordering. You don't know which one is better, which one is not. So one thing can be done is like regression problems, so where basically you map to some real values. But how much real values do you want to consider in that case? So that's why often the regression is even tougher problem than the classification. In that case, what else can be done? Is probably classification is not so accurate. Regression is not that easy. What is the other thing we can do? Probably you can think of something in between, right? So ordinal regression, also called the ranking problem, basically map to an ordered set of classes. So basically it's fairly obscure sub branch of statistics, but this is what we want here. So here basically what you do based on it, basically rather than considering the real value, you can visualize it like you have the range of the values. So for example, 0 to 0.3 will be class 1, and that is the highest best class, and probably and then probably 0.3 to 0.4, that will be class 2, which will not be as good as probably C1, but less than that. Similarly, for further, you can think of classes C3, C4, C5, and so on. So in a way, now you have the classes and also the ordered, you can say the ordered classes, right? So this is something the do you think makes sense more in case of information retrieval? So I believe so, right? So it means, yeah, someone is there.
No, just saying yes.
Okay, great. So this formulation basically gives the extra power. So if the relations between the relevance levels are modeled, documents are good versus other documents. So it's not just now you're saying whether it's relevant or not, whether now you're not just saying it's good or not, you're saying this document is better than probably this document too.
So, can you please explain like how ordinal regression is formulated? Like, is it like between pairwise classes or?
So you can think it like this. So assume you have a number of categories C. So they are now ordered in this way. So probably C1, C2, C3, and Cj, right? So C1 probably will be, you can think of, suppose we were giving the regression value because it's based on the regression values, right? So what I'm giving example. So for example, you have the numbers, the possible numbers is probably 0 to 1. So 0 to 0.3 would be probably C1. 0.3 to 0.5 will be C2. For example, 0.5 to probably 0.6 will be C3 and so on. So this is kind of ordinal regression setup we're talking about. Fine.
Yes.
Okay. So assume training data is available consisting of document query pairs as earlier, and they are represented as some feature vector X, and their relevance ranking Ci. So now for the training, you have this example, right? You have this information for training. So earlier what you had, earlier you only have probably this pair, their feature, and whether they are relevant or not. So now you have additional information with you, right? So this is query document pair, this is feature, and probably their relevance document Ci. And so once you train this, you can basically, learn a general classifier with the rank, that is learning to rank. And once you have that learning to rank, so next time when you receive just query document pair as earlier again, so earlier what you're doing, only you are saying, okay, so this is relevant document, this is not relevant. So what you are be doing now, since you have, just think it like you have more classes. So now you'll be telling, so given this document query pair, so this is belong to the category C1 or C2 and Cn. And since you already know their ranking, accordingly you can take a call, and whenever you return the document to the user, you can rank them because you know probably this category is more important as compared to others. So there are a number of techniques which are proposed. I will not go into the details of that. So again, the relevant papers are available here, but just think in that way, because otherwise it will be too overwhelming, at least for the class. But just think it that way. So as I said, the Vapnik is the one who proposed the SVM, and using this basically, later on the Zhao Qin is one of the again very popular researcher. They proposed ranking SVM, which is adopted in the ranking and started using this. Similarly, the neural net, the RankNet is, the Burgess is one of the again very popular researcher. They started using RankNet and they proposed this. So using this neural net, so a number of techniques are there, which basically has used basically these proposed techniques to rank the different documents based on the different feature you have, and they use the rather than just telling relevant or not relevant, they basically rank them. And as we have seen that in case of information retrieval, the plain or traditional classification is not going to help in general. So that's why we need to have some ranking, and using this ranking algorithms, you can get the best results in case. So similar to SVM neural network, so there is tree ensembles. So in the tree ensemble, again, you have random forest, boosted decision tree, and so on, which has been used by a number of companies in their thing. In fact, this area also got much facilitated, as well as probably got benefited when Yahoo released a very good data set. So basically they released a challenge called Learning to Rank Challenge in 2011. So they released a good, very rich data, which is probably, as I was referring earlier, it's not possible for not human, I would say. It is not possible for the academician to create such data set, especially you can say the real world data set. So it is only accessible to the big companies like Yahoo, Google, Microsoft, and many other companies, right? So they have released their data set. So this basically helped them. This basically helped the researcher to come up with a number of methods. So for example, the Burgess I'm talking about, so Burgess proposed the RankNet and so on. So they have basically also proposed like, so a linear combination of 12 models. And so basically they used 8 tree ensembles, 2 lambda rank, and probably 2 logistic regression based model to come up with the final model, and which basically helped them to win the challenge. Why do you think, I mean, they use 12 models? Anyone?
So to adjust for the variance, like each model may have learned, may underpredict certain classes which can be compensated by other models.
Very nice. So anybody know the Netflix challenge? Netflix challenge on, it was, I believe, recommendation, right? So what happened is, so they have mentioned, okay, so this is the base accuracy that you have to achieve. If anyone will beat this performance, we will give you $1 million to the team. There are a number of teams have participated. No one was able to basically beat the performance which Netflix already had. So what they have done, so basically in the leaderboard, they keep showing on the leaderboard, so who are the top team. So the top 3, or probably some team, I forgot the numbers, what they have done, they collaborated among themselves. They said, since individually we are not able to beat, so how about let's join the hands. So in a way, जैसे हमने बचपन में पढ़ा है, like unity में ताकत होती है, right? So it's more, they all basically collaborated and they combined their approaches, ensembled their approaches, and combinedly they were able to basically beat the, I mean, whatever the base performance proposed by the Netflix, and they were able to win they were able to basically win the Netflix challenge, and of $1 million or so, right? So in a way, often as Venkatesh mentioned as well, right? So different models learn different things, right? So some models probably learn some features probably in better way than others, right? It might be the case, I mean, if you only one model, you miss out something. So probably in that case, the best way is somehow ensemble them, somehow combine them in a better way. Again, so you cannot just randomly combine. You need to again think about different ways of combining, different ways of combining them. So there are again several ways of ensembling. You can probably go into more details if you want, but just get an overall idea. So often ensembling is a good way of dealing with the variety, the variation in the type of data that you are going to deal. So they have proposed the regression tree as well. So I skipped this part, but I given them idea, overall idea. So how it is going to help. So regression tree is something you can think it like this. So you have the root. So you try to, based on the different values that you are getting, you can train in such a way. You basically divide the overall examples that you have. Similarly, based on the, you can further keep it dividing. So earlier it is divided like this, and based on the, if you go down in the trees, you can further divide, like, okay, so now this part can be further divided into like 1 and 2. This part can be further divided into 3 and 4, and so on. So in this way, basically you can come up with the regression tree, which help you in coming with the ordinal values for a given query document. So I skipped this part, but the overall idea, I believe, is how we can rank the different documents and so on. So I go to now the next part is, okay. So again, this is a variation of the regression tree that we have just seen before. So here basically what they have done, they have considered the how we can use the gradient to come up with a better, you can say, the regression tree. So in this case, they have proposed, okay, so for given this quadratic function, how we can come up with the better basically the partition. In that case, they have considered this optimum by considering the derivative of this, and accordingly they come up with this, and so on. So they further basically divided this by keep computing the numbers. So for this particular technique details, I request you to look into the paper, paper for this, which has been mentioned in the last of the slide. But uh, it, it is not that tough if you want. I mean, it's just the extension of the regression tree we're talking about. So like keep dividing the tree in such a way that you keep getting the different leaf nodes, and leaf node basically will be divided based on whether which ordinal values they have. So this is kind of again some kind of partition that you can see that you have done. So here basically they are mainly using the gradient boosted values that they are computing. So this is the algorithm that they can follow, they have proposed. So again, so in the interest of time as well as the reducing the complexity in the class, because it will be too overwhelming at the moment. So I skip this algorithm, but if you want, you can follow this. It's exactly the same which has been proposed in the paper. Similar to the this that RankNet which I was referring earlier. So they have proposed the lambda mart via the RankNet. So basically they have used the neural net ranker. So the idea is here. So they need to learn a function with the parameter w in such a way that given input xi, you need to find out what the label it has. So for a given query, like in our case, we have the query and the documents, and we need to find the ranking class. So for a given query q, we learn the probability of the different ranking classes for document in such a way, like the di is you can say more relevant as compared to dj. And how you can do so, you can compute this using this for this basically the formula. So where you can compute the probability di is greater than dj, and that is basically the further computed by using this. And you can, because often when you train your machine learning model, you need to have some kind of cost function or the loss function, because these loss functions basically determine such a way that whatever the predicted values that you have, how you can minimize the it's how can minimize the difference between the predicted value as from the original value. So if the predicted value is almost same as, or you can say very close as the original value, it means so overall method is that you have built is very accurate. So RankNet, again, the Burgess I was referring to, so they have proposed this by combining this method. So again, so just to reduce the complexity, I skip this, but for details you can refer in the paper. So the overall idea is, because if you have suppose two documents, right? If they are on the top, it means they're perfect, right? Because I mean, these two are the relevant documents. If you're returning 10 documents, for example, here, so the relevant document should come in the top. As compared to here, if one document that you have on the top and probably the second relevant document at the bottom. So basically here basically you basically having 10 pairwise errors, because when you compare with this, so this will probably go up, this will compare with this and go up and so on, and this is at the right place. So you can say the 10 errors, at least if you have this many examples, it will be, you need to go up. And in this case probably it's both documents can be go up, so it will be less pair wise error, because it is not that bottom in the overall rank, but still that requires some kind of improvement in whatever the document you are having. So using RankNet lambdas, so they were able to basically build the methods through which they can improve this overall ranking of the document that you have. So again, so I skipping this part here, but if you recall, in case of ranking, we need to compute the NDCG. So like how much ranking has changed. So this is, I was referring here. So you need to change the ranking, right, in order to come up with the best ranking in this case. So you need to basically just look into, you need to watch how much ranking has changed when we swap different documents. And using this formula, you can basically come up with this lambda ij, which help you to determine this overall rank net they have proposed. So similarly, they have proposed from lambda rank to lambda mart. So mart was another example, another method I have shown earlier. So because in the research, what you do in the research, basically you try different models, different algorithm which are proposed, and you try to beat them. And often how you try to beat them, first by changing them, right? By changing the part of it, or probably changing some component of the proposed method, which may be basically not performing that great. So this is something you can think in that way. So they have proposed lambda rank from lambda mart, which are there. So this is the lambda mart algorithm, and for the details, please refer to the paper. Okay, so let's get back to the Yahoo Learning to Rank challenge. So goal was to validate learning to rank methods on a large, whether it's working or not. And given the participants, given the solution they have got, it's shown that it works, right? So previous work on mainly driven by the later data set. So now using the proposed data set, it was have several features, and one of the publicly available learning to rank data set, and which basically help the overall community in coming with different solutions, including like lambda mart, lambda rank, rank to rank net, and so on. So what they have released, so they have only released the feature vectors, not all details, for several reasons, because often they are private, they are proprietary, and so on. So you can think of, right? So whatever the feature they have released, again, whatever the performance that you're achieving is limited by what they have released. What if you have probably these additional details, probably you may come up with even better features, and that is also one of the reasons they don't release, because if they release everything to public, right, I mean, their competitor will have an edge on them. So these companies always want to have some edge over probably the other companies and other counterparts. So in a way, I mean, so despite they have not released this information, but I'm sure, I mean, the companies, whenever they release dataset, they only release a part of dataset, which probably won't affect their business a lot. But overall, it helped them in promoting the research, because that is also one of the role these days these companies have as part of promoting the research further. Because end of the day, I mean, if they basically, other researchers also contribute, right? So the overall you can say the solution is also in the public, right? So they can also get some idea, which often may not be the case that easy to they have. So again, there are several benefits of that. So these are the entries they have made. So they have submitted different models were performing differently. So once they see, I mean, this is not working, I mean, these are most of the models you can see the performing very similar, right? Their NDCG is like 0.774 to 0.772, kind of very, very similar. It's not that different. So what they have done, so as I said, they tried to started ensembling methods. So once they start using ensemble method, the improvement was slight, but there is, because they have more generality, and in this way, basically, they improve the overall results. So this is one of the lambda mart. I mean, the kind of the code is, and probably the project is already public. So if you go to this GitHub link, the project is already there. You can try by yourself. So you can have the raw example of XGBoost for ranking with lambda mart. So you can try. So these days you have, I mean, these libraries and datasets already publicly available. You can just try. So this is just some code that you can get, which is basically, these are the part of the GitHub link I provided. So often there is also some discussion in the domain, is that so why machine learning used heavily for Google's ranking, ad ranking, and probably less for their search ranking. So definitely they use, it's not like they don't use, they use, but they might have seen much better results for ad ranking as compared to normal search ranking there. What do you think? I mean, what could be the reason? Anyone?
So won't it be like ads are more becoming more personalized? So basically, the machine learning is more focused on the person's behavior rather than search is ranking is for based on just the text.
Exactly. And also, you don't have control over what the user is asking, right? But in case of ad, you know what user is, what type of things they are looking for. So for example, if the person is searching for, searching for say cold drink, in that case you will provide a similar recommendation, right? But in case of search query, often that is uh, not that much personalized. So personalization is definitely one answer, and also you can think of more. You can go to this particular Quora question to probably get more details. So overall summary is, finally, the idea of learning to rank functions has been around for several years, but only recently ML started being used, and now it's a hot research area, which people also contributing significantly. And so there is kind of every reason to think that this can be further improved by advances in machine learning, and the IR will grow in the future, and in fact it is. And basically these are the resources which we are talking about. So this is Nalapathi's paper, Ramesh Nalapathi's paper. So discriminative models for information retrieval. So this is the benchmark data set I was talking about. And and the Burgess paper, the Lambda Mart I was referring to, and which is basically published in 2010, learning to RAM to Lambda rank to Lambda Mart. And this is the challenge we were referring to, Yahoo learning to rank challenge. So with this, I end here. Thank you so much. Any questions before we go for presentation? Okay, so it seems not. Then who will be presenting today?
So can we proceed first? Group number 26.
Akansha?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Akansha Srimal, right?
Yes, sir.
so make
Okay,
me
so
hello. So sir,
yeah,
we are group number 26. Make me co-host because I am sharing my screen.
yeah. So Sivank, I made you co-host. You can go next. Who's the third group?
So we are group number 9.
Akhil.
Yes.
Okay, so Akhil, I made you co-host. You can go in the last. Okay, so please start, Akansha.
Yeah, Shivank, you can present.
Okay, so Sivank and you both are in the same group. Then I probably am missing the third group.
So we are the third group, Srishti Sahani.
So Srishti, should I make you the co-host?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Srishti.
Okay, I'm starting. Good morning, everyone. I'm Shivam from Group 26, and we are here to present on Maslow's bot. Next. So we present a unique chat box which monitors all the needs of a person since he or she is born, and it will help in the physical as well as the mental growth. The chatbot will work as the host companion. It will possess all the important traits of a human. The chatbot will be sociable and will have its own personality, intellect, and will exhibit empathy. The chatbot will help to fulfill the basic needs as well as complex desirable objectives. So these objectives can be his social physiological needs as well as his personal and personality development. Next. So we want to present an intelligent chatbot which with state-of-the-art emotion capturing devices backed with an advanced feedback system which could supplement learning as well as overall growth. So our aim is to design a chatbot that can do all the information tasks possibly integrated within a chip that can capture all the essential brain activities, behavior, and other useful information that can help it understand us better. So now Pradeep will acquaint us with the motivation behind this idea.
Trial version.
ट्रायल वर्जन है भाई, क्या हो गया?
I think
Trial
Pradeep, you're
version.
not audible.
Pradeep, I cannot hear you. I can only hear trial version.
Trial version.
Pradeep, we cannot hear you.
Trial version.
Is this part of the presentation? I'm just wondering.
No, sir.
Trial version.
Okay, so maybe I'll continue with Pradeep's part if he's not here.
Yeah, please.
Okay. So basically, our main idea is based upon Maslow's hierarchy needs. So it was presented by Abraham Maslow. So let's go to the needs. What are the various needs? Next. So this is a pyramid which represents these are the
Trial version.
This is a pyramid which represents these are the various needs. The first one is the biological and physiological needs such as food, sleep, water. The second is safety, which
Trial
includes,
version.
Pradeep, can you mute? The second one is safety, which includes security, health, and finances. The third one is love and belongingness, which is basically friendship, intimacy, family, and connection. The fourth one is esteem, including respect, status, recognition, and self-esteem. And the last one is self-actualization, that is meeting one's potential and personal development. So this particular pyramid, it actually conveys that until and unless you get through your basic needs, that is when you don't have food to eat, or like how can you party with your friends when you don't have food to eat. So first of all, you need to fulfill your basic needs and then you go to the upper level. Next. So these are the basic needs that we aim to achieve, and if we are not able to fulfill our needs, such as if we are able to fulfill our basic needs but we are not able to socialize, then it might lead to mental and health issues. So one who is able to achieve all the needs is basically perfect one, but there are when we are unable to achieve these needs, it leads to mental issues. Next. So in our scope, this particular chatbot will help the user, will provide appropriate suggestions and recommendations at the right time, and tips to ensure that every need of the person is fulfilled, and and this will actually guide them to achieve their goals. Next, now we'll see the various existing systems for this. Sudha, can you continue?
Yes. So let us see the existing systems. So we have found out the following chatbots: Replica, Cookie, Siri, and Alexa. Next slide. Replica is AI chatbot system. It connects with the user emotionally. It can act like a friend, partner, or a mentor. But as far as growth is concerned, it doesn't help the user to grow. It can be sometimes monotonous. Next slide. Cookie. Cookie is another chatbot. Cookie does not connect that much with the user emotionally. It is not able to understand the overall context. For example, when I asked him who is the prime minister of India, it answers correctly. But when I asked about who was before him, it couldn't relate to the previous question and answered randomly. Next slide. The other familiar chatbots are Siri and Alexa. Both performs well on user queries, but they cannot give suggestion out of the box. They can be very frustrating at times. And these chatbots mix the conceptual understanding and the other aspects on which we are focusing. So these existing systems doesn't help us in personal growth and can be monotonous and are not empathetic. Next slides will be covered by Shivang.
Yeah, so coming on to our proposed system and plan of action. So our proposed system pipeline consists of two main components that will act on the front end. The first thing is a monitoring body sensing device that will monitor different things on different changes that is occurring in our body, like pulse rate changes and SpO2 changes. And depending upon this, we will the chatbot will ask that what had happened at that moment, that you are feeling very excited at that moment. So what had happened? So it will keep a record of the activities that has been performed for the day, and depending upon depending upon the type of information, it will be classified that what sort of need that has been fulfilled for today, or what are the deficiencies in the need that has been occurring. So depending upon that, there are five as the way we have represented the Maslow hierarchy. hierarchy. Depending upon the same, we are also classifying our needs, like what types of needs have been fulfilled or in deficit. So depending upon this, we will collectively, the information will collectively stored as a Maslow entity, and it will be updated day by day as the user will go along with the chatbot. And after this, this Maslow entity receiving information from the external sources and information from other users, it will act and provide some suggestions. The external information that has been grasped from the outer sources like internet should be classified in different level, that at what level it should be. Like suppose if the user is very well versed in academics, like in science and maths, then he will suggest that okay, you should go for an engineering degree. So something like that, feedback will be generated by the chatbot, and this suggestion will be more personalized. But in order to achieve this, we need to enhance our chatbot in some direction, and we found that in order to make this system fully reliable, we should work on these features in order to improve our chatbot. The first one is like personalized contextual information. So the chatbot should be able to contain the personalized information of the chatbot that is being given by the user at some time. Like suppose if the user has said that okay, I like the color red, that is my favorite color. So at the next point of time, when the user asks that okay, what dress I should wear, then it should then the chatbot should say like okay, you should wear a red dress. So something like this. And the next one is like ability to identify differently formed questions with the same intent. So on this, our existing chatbots are also working very well. So these can be handled by using convolutional neural network based chatbots. And the next one is volatile conversation context. As we saw that in the example that we have performed, that it was not able to identify the context that we were talking about the Narendra Modi, Prime Minister of India. So it should answer in something related to that. So the chatbot should possess some sort of short-term memory, which can take some words into consideration that has been part of the conversation. So we can do it using the RNN-based chatbots that has been described in the tutorial also. So after this, the two other features that also needs to be embedded is like incremental description of user with time and guided learning. So this comprises of uh, the it actually creates a a logical image of the user, so that it will be stored into the database, and depending upon different changes, it will evolve and produce some guided suggestions to the user. And all these features are very implemented in our chatbot, because it knows the user from the beginning. So it will be having all the personalized information time to time. It is also getting updated, so it will work. The next important feature that needs to be implemented is how we are going to detect several emotions. So we found this reference paper very useful, and this paper suggests that okay, the when we are having different emotion, our pulse rate varies. So depending upon our pulse rate, we are having depending upon different pulse rate, we can identify that okay, what are the emotions could be. And this paper suggested that if as you are saying that there are three different levels, like for neutral, there are the pulse rate levels are having some different pattern, and for other there are some different pattern. So we can train a classifier on it, as the paper has also trained a classifier using decision tree and found 70% accuracy. It just takes the feature, and for one feature it is normalized, and for another one it is not normalized, and then by using this feature the classifier is trained. So it is all about the proposed system and plan of action. Now Akansha will tell about the feasibility of our proposed project.
Yeah, so feasibility includes the short term, mid term, and term. So let's see the short term goal next. So the short-term goal is to develop an intelligent bot capable of handling the personal needs such as food and health-related needs, and the advanced need which might be emotional security related to empathy or some companion, financial security about investments, etc., so that the person can have a comfortable life. The bot will be using a machine learning mechanism so that it will be able to empathize with the user and provide a friend-like experience. And there will be guided and feedback mechanism. That is, if the user tells, I don't like this particular thing, the bot won't be repeating that thing again. So it will be a learning curve for the bot so that it can personalize itself with respect to the user. Next. So middle term. So this will be post 5 to 10 years from now, wherein there will be development related to artificial empathy. As to provide a human-like experience, the bots need to have the feeling of empathy. So in the middle term goal, that the bot will be able to provide a human-like experience to the person. Also, along with that, with improvement in security and data storage, it will empower the bots to perform more complex and confidential tasks such as bank transactions, etc. Next. So our end term goal is that, so ultimate goal is to make a human integrable device that can process the human brain signals to identify what are the human preferences, how does he feel at the right time, and perform the right and perform or the right suggestions at the right time. So a real time approach for this is next. So Elon Musk company Neuralink is basically working on a chip. So this particular chip can be embedded into the human brain with the help of some surgery, and it is totally harmless. So right now it has been done on a pig, that the chip was inserted in a pig, and they could understand how the pig is feeling, whether he is excited or he is fearful, etc. So using this particular chip, our bot will be signals from the chip, our bot will be able to understand the feelings of the user, and then ask him or suggest him or call his parents if something fearful or something like that is detected. So in this way, each person will have his own personal companion to help him grow and develop throughout the life. So that is the idea that we are proposing. That's it. Thank you. Any questions?
Thanks, very nice presentation. So in the interest of time, so anyone has question, please ask over the chat. And next group, please start your presentation. Thanks.
Yeah, hello, am I audible?
Yes, please go ahead, Prabha.
Okay, present. Okay, so good morning, all of you. Here we are presenting our proposed IS system, which is COVID Vault, a dynamic and better visualization COVID search engine. So we chose to work upon a current pandemic situation, which is COVID-19, and thus make an IS system out of it. We are group number 9, and I'm Prabhaljan, and this is my team members, Anjali, Akhil, and Shraddha. Next. So to build an IR system in a pandemic situation, we need to ask ourselves some questions mentioned on the screen, like appropriate corpus, appropriate content, how easily it would get deployed when another type of pandemic situation arises, how are we customizing our search engine, how to evaluate performance, etc. Next. So after thinking, we arrived on a problem domain which consists of the following points. As in current situation, we have tens of thousands of documents and data, and that too keeps on increasing daily. Since it is easy to write a document slash or we can set it article over the internet, and very few of them are reviewed till now. So for public health and safety, we want our search result to retrieve correct information. Hence, we want no misinformation. Also, we know that medical practitioners or policymakers don't have much time to pass all the data or the whole data set, as they are time bounded, time constrained. So these points motivates us to build an efficient IR system over time. Next. We can see in this slide that how influencers, politicians, celebrities are responsible for false information, which can be dangerous for the people who blindly follows the search result. We can see according to the report, 20% were the false claims, as you can see over the screen. Next. There exists some related work. The first one is COVID-19 research search engine, which is by Salesforce, which is an AI-based search engine. The another search engine next, which is developed by Microsoft, which is biomedical search beta by Microsoft, which is also an AI-powered search tool. And this tool was provided on a short-term basis, and both the search engine use the COD-19 dataset. Now Shraddha will continue and take on another existing IR system from here.
Thanks, Prabal. Yeah, COVIDX is another system working in this area. It can be checked at covidx.ai. Basically, it works on CORD dataset, which is COVID-19 open research dataset. It will be discussed later in the slides. It is basically an end-to-end search engine to access the required information from the data. Main goal is to do evidence-based decision making for COVID-related research. Some example scenarios can include like checking the effectiveness of masks or to know about the genetic structure of COVID-19. It aims to provide fresh and correct insight for research and to the doctors. Next slide, please. Okay. So basically, indexing of the documents in the dataset is performed as first step, and then their re-ranking is done. Three main systems are used. Firstly, a mono T5 that uses a T5 neural net. It gets the output as a true or false based on the input document, if that is relevant to the given query or not. Second is Duo T5, which is a better and more stable version, and it basically checks if given two documents, one is more relevant to another for a given query queue. Then is the relevance feedback, which takes it as a classification problem and marks the documents as relevant and non-relevant. Uh, Next slide, please. Okay. Yeah, so COVIDX is being used heavily in Track COVID challenge with significant results. The only challenge it is currently facing is that the dataset is increasing at a rapid rate in performance. From now onwards, Akhil will take over. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So I'll be talking about another existing system which is called a Track COVID. So all the previous models that you've seen, they all use the COVID-19 open research dataset. What is it? It is a dynamic dataset which contains scholarly articles about COVID-19 and the coronavirus family of viruses. As of now, it has 52,000 papers, out of which 41,000 have full text. It has peer-reviewed literature as well as data from archival sites such as MedRevix and BioRvix, and it keeps updating with the new papers as they come. So what exactly is Track COVID? You can think of it as like a search engine, but you can ask what is the difference between Track COVID and Google. So Track COVID takes into consideration the expected users, the assessment process, the relevance criteria, the evaluation metrics, and the projected timeline. So there is a timeline for everything. How is the workflow? There is a COVID-19 data set. You give 5 to 10 queries. You give a challenge to various participants where they come up with various models. For each and every query, there will be some documents that will be retrieved. All these documents will be pooled. Then there will be some annotators. Those annotators will divide these documents into relevant, partially relevant, or non-relevant, and then evaluation will be done. And this thing will be done in various rounds. From seeing another paper where they have compared Amazon, Google, Track COVID, IR engines, and you can see from this table that from various evaluation metrics, Track COVID does better everywhere. Limitations we can say is all these processes need to be done in a fixed time period. The participants have to come up with their models in a week. So this thing puts a hard limit on the number of judgments that can be obtained, and it may result in a shallow judgment pool. Also, there are various annotators for various different topics. So each annotator can have their own idea about a topic, and hence different annotators can lead to different notions of relevance. And all the papers that are being used in this COVID-19 data set can be published later on or retracted, which may lead to the irrelevance of the judgments that have come from now. So what novelty we can give? We can see that the data set is dynamically changed. It's changing dynamically. So let's say, so we searched for these solutions, and we came across a paper which was iterative expectation for multi-period IR. Let's say for a query Q, for each time period T, you need to retrieve a fixed number of M documents, and you need to display it to the user. So for each fixed number of documents M, some annotators will be there which will click on those documents based on if they are relevant or not. Based on the number of clicks, you will have a relevance score R, and then the next time when you again show and retrieve M documents for the same query to the annotators, the irrelevant documents will not be taken into consideration while showing the documents that are retrieved for that query. So you can see it is an iterative process, and as the new data comes in, the number of iterations can be decided by the project supervisors, and the number of relevant documents for a query can change. This was a novelty one. Novelty two will be given by Anjali.
Good morning, everyone. Another novelty that we are proposing here is to cope up with the dynamic and ever-growing COVID-19 dataset, where every day new articles related to COVID-19 are being added. Now, the earlier approaches, the search engines that we talked about, they are built upon the models trained on the data set as it was at a specific time. But because it's changing, so we need something more robust. Thus, along with the semantic analysis of the articles, a knowledge graph is proposed that contains the relationships between real-world entities, which could be papers, topics, authors, etc. And this graph would get updated as and when a user gives the new query using text mining and ML algorithms. For the next slide. Yeah, so this graph would contain entities corresponding to papers, authors, institutions, concepts, and topics. So what would be the final outcome of the search engine would be this graph combined with the semantic embeddings, which would give much more better output for similar article retrieval. The next slide. Talking about the entities in the graph, the paper, author, and institution entities are quite straightforward. They can be extracted from the articles. If we talk about the concept identity, how is it extracted? It is extracted using CM, Comprehend Medical Detect Entities version 2, which is an Amazon Web Service. So what it does is it classifies entities into entity types. For example, ibuprofen, which is an entity, it belongs to medication category, which is an entity type. And the topics are generated with the help of medical professionals. So next slide. Now, for example, if a person or a researcher gives a query asking what authors and organizations are publishing research pertaining to the drug remdesivir and human lab trial. So the figure on the left side, it shows the query process using a subset of the graph. The author entity, they are surrounded by the blue box. It is connected to two papers, entities discussing both remdesivir and lab trials. And further, the other boxes are connected to the other authors who have talked about the same topic, and finally also the institutions they are related to. So that is how we go about this search engine. Now the feasibility will be talked about, Shraddha.
Thanks, Anjali. Okay, so from feasibility point of view, since we have talked about the data set that it is very fastly changing, so the short-term goal is to make the system very efficient so that it is able to cope up with the fast ongoing changes in the core data set. If it is stable, then it can contribute in the research, and the risk of infections can go down, and the recovery rates will go up, which is the need of the hour. And as a mid and long term target, the main aim is to achieve a level of stability in the system so that if a similar situation or a pandemic like this happens anytime in future, our system is ready, and it can simulate by just changing a few parameters. Yeah, that's all from our side. Thank you.
Okay, so thanks, Shraddha and others. So again, in the interest of time, we are running out of time. So next group, please share your presentation. And so others, please ask your questions to the team on the chat. Srishti, you're on mute.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So good morning, everyone. This is Team 45 presenting, and our group members are Srishti, me, Shrija, Rishabh, and Vijay. So for today's presentation, I would like you all to imagine a scenario first. So imagine that we are not a student at IIIT, and we are not even in our 20s, and this is not even 2021. So let's imagine that we are a regular human being in the early 2080s, and we are attending a sales pitch for a newly launched product by the leading multinational corporation in the social media domain. So next.
Art has always been a huge motivation for technology. Our loved ones leave us behind, and their legacies are often lost, but the art of the generation lives on. to help us visualize and develop some understanding of those times. Today, we would like you to begin the journey of the new with a reference to the old. J.K. Rowling, an author in the late 20th century, first presented the idea of a way that our dead could live beyond their time. They were mere paintings that captured an essence of what a person was like. The idea, however, was pushed further by a TV show that released 20 years after her first book was published, Upload. Upload peeked into the future and showed us a glimpse of what life would be like if our departed lived on in a virtual dimension. And today, we present to you Revive, because being dead never felt so alive. To give us a glimpse of what our product can do, we would like you to connect live with one of our departed, Annabelle, who passed on to the other side in a tragic accident 4 years ago.
Hi, I am Annabelle. I died in an unfortunate accident on 23rd April 2076, and I thought that was it and my life was over. Fortunately, I was enrolled as one of the testers for the Revive project, and my cognitive integration onto the app was completed almost immediately. It was as if the accident never took place.
Thank you for sharing your experience, Annabelle. I understand that at this point in time, lots of you will be having lots of questions. So before proceeding to questions, I would like to invite Rishabh to give you a brief about the product and what exactly powers it.
I can say this without any doubt that Elon Musk was one of the greatest tech revolutionaries ever. He transformed the world as we know it by his inception of the Neuralink, providing mankind to share ideas without any barriers. And today, we are proud to present an upgrade of this very technology that not only allows us to communicate without barriers, but takes it a step further by providing us with the ability to recreate consciousness within minutes of a person passing, thus making it possible for the person to live on in the virtual domain. The technology is aided by artificial neural networks and bioengineering wonders to create an interface that allows our users not only to think better, but live better.
Hi, I'm Vijay. So with Revive, you are not only living forever, but we will have ways to make it count. We offer a number of features for not only for the departed, but also for the ones who are left behind. The first one is, of course, a seamless cognitive integration to ensure that your onboarding process is as seamless as it can be. We also provide a legacy conver in which, if you want to leave a legacy behind for your future generations, or maybe some of your achievements for your for other people, you can do it. We also have lost and found corner because cause family is never bound by any blood ties. Apart from these usual benefits, we're offering Revive extension, which will integrate with all of your social media handles, say for Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, or Tinder, and a portal on which only the dead are allowed. So you can interact with them and have an experience and match your partner to interact and have a conversation with. As of now, we are only giving UI for only the face. Your cognitive database will be stored on a server, and you can interact with, as you saw with the Annabelle, you can interact with her, or you can interact with your dead personality over the UI. In a couple of years, we will also be providing a complete full body interface. So in order to interact with a person. Susan, now we can start the features.
Yes. So currently we have huge future plans for the product. So with the latest being the seamless integration for the onboarders, like Vijay said, and the end goal can be like a complete lifelike experience for both the departed and their near and dear ones. So that is about it. And now we would like to open the floor for any questions.
Okay, so very interesting presentation. So is there any similar product, or something?
So far there's not a product, but we came across a patent that has a chat box. So they proposed the idea, it's not yet implemented. So they have proposed a chatbot that would allow you to do this, but that is only possible once you're able to upload your consciousness. So that is a paper that we came across, and we thought that we could extend it using IR and creating seamless lifelike videos, and in further, if possible, extend it to artificial intelligence, extend it to augmented reality, and create a complete lifelike experience.
Yes, it is kind of quite possible. It's not an impossible project because in 2017, Joseph is a person working in the Google Brain. He filed a patent for creating a conversational chatbot for a specific person, and it got accepted in, I think, January 2021. He got a lot of media attention because the chatbot, the storing specific consciousness, was able to even interact with the person, a dead person. So it is quite possible. And for the UI part, Synthesia is working on this conversational UI, which would be either a face or a full body to interact with. The features are they'll be providing some predefined UIs, and which will be focusing on hand movements, lip movements, or a completely realistic UI, as we saw in the video. And also in the Replica AI, which is known for having just a chat bot, during their testing phase, the CEO also had a friend named, I think, Robert or someone. He was helping her with interacting and testing this Replica AI product. But unfortunately, he died. So as of now, this kind of thing, interacting with the dead, is his consciousness is stored for the Replica AI part. So it is as of now possible, but whether it will be ethical to do it is still a question about that. Or is it, should we do it? That's a big question.
I mean, yeah, so definitely ethics is one of the important question. Second thing is, I mean, I'm not sure for how many users data they are able to get it at the moment. I mean,
at the now, it's only one person centric. So right now they've only created for one person. So that is why we try to like plot it into the future, because right now the brain is so complex that they can only do it for one person, but to do it in a commercial level, it will take years and years now. So, and even then, if it will be made or not made, that is the question, because ethics come into play.
Because Microsoft, he was at that time he was working with Microsoft. So Microsoft had the ownership of patent is having Microsoft is having the ownership of patent, and they unveiled that as of now they're not planning to use it in production because of its ethical reasons. Second, this patent takes data not only from the user but also from all of his social media handles. So to get a more realistic view of person's mind, to get a more realistic view, these Facebook handles and all of these were using in the patent.
Coming to the question in the chat, so like we discussed, the complexity of the brain and the limited availability of the data, and practically doing it at this point in time. So that is a challenge. So yeah, that is about the current limitations that we have, and since we're only focusing upon one person at a time. So yeah.
okay, and last question. So how you are going to evaluate whether, so whatever the interaction you are having is exactly the way the person was doing? The person is not there.
So that will be over the time, right? So that won't happen like at the second the person dies. So their consciousness will be stored within over the time period. So once that happens, so sort of an avatar or something like that will be created for the person to evaluate while they're living. So maybe monthly sessions or something like that, 30 to 25-minute sessions where they interact with an avatar themselves, so that there's a learning curve. And so we can't do it minutes after the person dies. So it will be a learning curve for the AI to also learn that person's behavior and to actually replicate that. And once the consciousness is uploaded, so it will it will be seamless provided that that happens in the future. So that is why we are saying that this is a very far-fetched idea, we know that, but it is something that we thought was interesting and that we wanted to present.
Then probably the next thing could be, I mean, why for the dead people? You can do.
So the next thing,
No,
the
no.
first thing can simply be what, and once that is accomplished, it can go on further.
No, I got it. What I mean to say, so if it is doable for the dead people, why not for the alive? The reason being, for example, many times your partner or probably the friend or probably family members are occupied, busy, and so on, especially for the elderly people, right? I mean, their kids, they are not able to give enough time to them. So how about having such system which can, again, so it's a realistic in a sense, and probably what do you think about it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That can be done for the living as well. But so this technology, if it is developed in the future, it can be used for a number of things. But then again, everything comes down to whether it's ethical to create a copy of somebody who is already living. And we did it for the dead because we thought that, okay, the person has passed on, and maybe the family members, or maybe somebody wants to keep their legacy with them. Maybe they want the person who they have lost, they want to have some essence of them. They want some sort of a communication. They want some sort of a channel. So that is what we were presenting. But once this technology is created, if in the future, then it can be used in a number of things. This is not the only application that can be used. If you're able to store your consciousness, you can do a variety of things with it.
Yeah, got it. Very nice presentation. Thanks.
One
Any other
limitation
question?
no, sir, the one limitation was that not a limitation to making from it being a realistic one, was that this is not just one standalone application. It will have to interact with Facebook, other company, Facebook, Tinder, WhatsApp, all of the social media handles, the personal background, and any other information which could be gathered about that person. The average cost for it, what the person told me was, could be around a couple of $1 million. So not everyone would be able to afford it or want it for the first day.
No, just think in that way. So when the first RAM was released, right, just 10 MB or probably 8 MB or 256 MB, how big was that and how costly it was that? So it's,
Yes, sir,
it's more about, I mean, yeah, it's more
Yes,
about.
sir. It's costly now. It's costly. It's causing $1 million now. Probably in the future, when this is possible and integrated with every Neuralink and something like that, so it will be cost efficient. Also, with time, it will become cost efficient. Of course.
Okay, then thanks. Any other questions from others? Okay, if not, then thank you so much. Take care. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.